We don't communicate. We used to be best of friends, but beat them in the election, so we don't communicate as much as we used to.
And we are live, Senators.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. I am Joe Benning, your host for this afternoon's activities. I am from the Caledonia County District. We have committee members, Senator Mazza from Colchester Grand Isle, Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans, Senator Parent from Franklin County, and we are expecting Senator McCormick from Windsor County at any moment. We have today, after having patiently waited for 3 months, finally gotten from our counterparts in the House the Capitol bill, which is the only piece of work we actually do in this committee room, so it's been real fun. Luckily for us, we've mirrored all of your witnesses throughout the entire process. Hopefully we're up to speed. But my first witness today is Representative Alice Emmons, the chair of the House Committee on Institutions and Corrections, or is it Corrections?
Corrections.
We are going to do a basic walkthrough of the bill for the first time. And we have several other witnesses, but we'll take everybody one step at a time and see how things go. So, Representative Emmons, Madam Chair, welcome to Senate Institutions. I think you know the drill.
I know the drill. Thank you. And for the record, my name is State Representative Alice Emmons, Chair of House Corrections and Institutions. And yes, we did work on this bill for quite a long time. So we have a very well practiced bill, people. Very thoughtful.
Oh.
So let me just summarize it briefly. We have really kept the majority, I would say 98% of the governor's recommend. There has been increases to the budget, even from the time the governor recommended his budget. There's a total of about $9.6 million in increase due to time and materials that we would not normally be seeing. And those projects have been ongoing projects, and this is the governor's recommend. And I'll start you there first. On the spreadsheet, the first one for the real time and materials increase is 108 Cherry. It's a $2 million increase. That's on line 7. And if you go down to line 12, that's the door controls at the Springfield Correctional Facility. We had hoped last year with a 2.75 that would complete the project. It came in at 750,000 more. And these are all governor recommends. Then if you go down to line 29, that's a secure residential facility, a mental health facility that's been built at the Woodside site. The 11.6 last year was to complete the project, because we had about $5 million from previous budgets. The governor recommended $3 million for time and material increase. While we were putting the bill together, the bids for lumber came in at $200,000 more than what was budgeted. So that's why it's 3.2 million. You flip the page and go to the third page, line 108, military and maintenance. Again, 200,000. Time and materials. That was the governor's recommend. The Williston Police Barracks at 113, that 5.6 million was to complete the project. It was going to cost overrun for time and materials at 3.5 million. So those were the governor's recommends, and we did put that in and agreed to that. So there's a total of 9.6 million due to increased time and material.
When you say these were the governor's recommend, are we talking about something that's been added since the governor made his original recommendation?
The only thing that was added was the 200,000 for the replacement of the Middlesex secure residential. That's the only increase that was done on top of what he proposed in January. Time and materials. And that bid came in for lumber as we were putting together the capital bill. So that starts us off. If you go back to the first page of the spreadsheet on line 4, this is our engineering and architectural costs. We in the past have been picking this up. This is 3.7 million. This is staff at BGS. Architectural and engineering costs that are related to the specific projects within their section. The appropriations committee has agreed to pick this up in the general fund. So it's not within our bonded budget for this year. We kept all the others the same as the governor, except the 32 Cherry. This is the 865 is in FY23. It's the first year. We felt that there's no way they could get all of that out the door. We worked with BGS and came to an agreement that they could do 565,000. We'll get them started. The 865 is a heavy.
My notes indicate from previous conversation that this was okay with BGS.
They said, yep, we asked, and they came back and said, yes, you can shave off 300,000.
No, this is my number. Dan was gonna come up with another spreadsheet. That's what covered it.
Yeah.
So if you go down to 19, line 19, that's the governor's recommended 4.265 in addition to the 2.535 we put in last year for the State House HVAC system. For a total of 6.8. This is to hopefully this summer and fall put in a summer boiler or possibly a heat pump. This will be put where our editing staff is in Ledge Council at this point. And then what would then happen, there would be an upgrade to the HVAC system for some of the Senate rooms, committee rooms on this side, as well as the Senate clerk's office, and I believe the court room as well, Senate court room.
Senate vote one of the clerk's office, yes.
That would occur this summer and fall. The thinking with also the 6.8 million is that it would allow BGS, there's 3 phases to upgrading our HVAC system. So the first phase is the boiler or the heat pump, and doing these Senate committee rooms on this side, as well as the Senate clerk's office and court room. That'd be phase 1. Phase 2, you then work into your Cedar Creek room, some of your house committees, in the House chamber. Part of this 6.8 would be purchasing the equipment this year for phase 2, which would get started after we adjourn next spring in 2023. So that's the thinking for the 6.8. BGS wants to get a head start on purchasing equipment for 2 reasons. It's the time that it's now taking to fulfill these orders, as well as cost increases. So if they can do it up front, it will save us in phase 2, is the thinking. They can only do the construction from the time we finish in May until December. So that's,
This figure is just for materials.
it's for the work, for the boiler, purchase the boiler, do the work, or the heat pump, do the work, and do the work here, and all the equipment and materials that would be needed for this end of the building and upstairs. And then also purchase equipment and the materials that would be needed for the second phase, which would start next spring in 2023. So they get a head start on getting the materials.
But when you say do the work, is that operational expenses?
No, it's installing the upgrade to HVAC. It's the materials that would be needed in this section. Could be the ductwork, could be the summer boiler, the heat pump, whichever way it goes, it's all the equipment that goes with updating the HVAC system and the ductwork and everything that would be needed in the building.
I'm just trying to get a clear picture. This is materials plus someone's paycheck to do the actual work. I'm not understanding correctly.
I would defer to BGS on this one.
Eric Philcorn,
For the
BGS.
project.
Yeah, it's the cost of doing the project. So when we go and pay Fitzagalli to build a new hospital, that's materials and labor for the construction project. What we're doing in this situation is the first year of labor, but we are essentially stockpiling the materials for the second year of the project so that we don't run the risk of our chillers being on a pier in South Korea or something. We want to make sure that we have stuff on site so that we will be able to move within the construction window next summer.
Yeah.
Next summer.
And the total project cost is what, about 18, 16?
So you got
I
there.
think it's around 16 million, it's the total project cost.
Estimated at this, sorry, Jennifer Fitch, VGS Commissioner, estimated at this point. So we'll continue to get estimates as we continue with the design process.
So the next one is, this is where we get a little complicated. We also have in our budget ARPA dollars. We have two different pots of ARPA dollars. We have ARPA dollars, it's your state recovery.
State fiscal recovery.
State Fiscal Recovery Act, which is the big pot, that's your 1.25 billion. That comes with certain parameters that are fairly broad. There's also another pot that I'll get to later. It deals specifically with infrastructure capital projects. That's also through the ARPA Act, but it's not part of the 1.25 billion. It is separate. That's 113 million, and that's for infrastructure, capital infrastructure, and that has very tight criteria that we need to adhere by for a project to qualify. This 600,000 is from the bigger pot of ARPA, the 1.25. This is a 3-acre stormwater. Some of those ARPA dollars can be used for stormwater, clean water projects. So what the governor has proposed, that some of our clean water projects in the 3-acre parcel stormwater be picked up by ARPA funds, and that's in the big bill. Those funds are in the general fund budget, and it's in the big bill. So that's why you see 600,000 taken out. That 600,000 is being picked up by ARPA dollars in the big bill.
Call that 1.25 billion. What did you call it?
State Fiscal Recovery Act, SFRA, and that's your big pot of money that's coming through. It's 1.25 billion. I mean, all of that money is in the appropriations. So that's why you see 600,000 eliminated. That was the governor's recommend. I'm sure that you have gotten in your book, you have gotten this sheet. Then this spreadsheet is the ARPA.
That's the last 2 pages in the balance.
You see,
You know what?
You better have.
The House got it, and I don't think we did because we weren't here.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
You're gonna have this. This is really important, because this is part of our budget. It was in the back of the book.
Yeah, so my office did send it over back when I presented the original governor's recommended capital BAA, which would have been be probably late January.
Okay.
Probably at home.
Yeah, heaven knows where that
I
is.
never printed. I will, I
And
have.
it hasn't changed since the January one?
I would start with the January one.
Yeah, the numbers
I think I
haven't
can find it.
Some numbers have changed, not on this particular piece, but on the 113 that has changed. You need to know what the government.
It's the last 2 pages of what's posted on the JFO site. That helps.
113 being the famous, each branch of government takes whatever it wants and makes a pitch.
Right. So the governor recommended for BGS statewide 3-acre parcel, 600,000. Come out, we
Oops, sorry.
call it the ARPA swap. You can call that later on. So then, the next two, lines 23 and lines 24 are items that the committee, House Corrections and Institutions put in. We put in 400,000 for the Windsor State property. This is the old correctional facility property in Windsor. BGS is currently, they have an RFP that they have had out and contracted to look at that property, look at the buildings, and come back with some cost estimates in terms of the cost of demolishing some of those buildings, which buildings really should be demolished, what the cost is, as well as taking down the razor wire. Not taking down the other wire that secures the facility, but the razor wire that's on top of that. We don't know what the dollar amount will be. We put in 400,000. We've got to start doing something with this property. And if there are some buildings that could start to be torn down, let's start that process. And that's what this 400,000 is for. And I believe that towards the end, middle to the end of April, BGS will have more firm numbers, I believe, for the RFP. So we put in 400,000. We want to start doing some work there too, so we can start resolving what happens at the Windsor facility.
So the 400 is potential tear down cost.
We don't know what the specific costs are, but we're saying, yes, we've got to start tearing down some buildings and taking down the razor wire.
Is any portion of the 400 for studying planning?
That's later on. We put in 50,000. That is later on in a different pot of bucket for ARPA. There were concerns that those dollars for that feasibility study might not be appropriate use of bonded dollars. There was concern about that. So we put that in the $113 million bucket.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Why was the 400,000? Why is it important to put it in now? Just to place market, just to get it there, just to put it there?
We want some work done this summer and fall. So we put some money in to get the project started. 'Cause we
Well,
want-
it's not project specific, it's just money, it's just gonna sit there and
We're waiting for the RFP to come back. Yes, so we can be more specific in which buildings or razor wire for a cost estimate, because that's what the RFP is aimed to do. What the cost would be, which buildings, and what the cost would be for each building, and what the cost would be for the razor wire. So 400,000 might just cover the razor wire in one other building. Or it might cover the razor wire in two other buildings. The numbers will be more firmed up in a few weeks.
Or it just might,
Or what?
state buildings ask for it.
Yeah.
State buildings ask for it.
No, it came from my committee because we knew there was an RFP out. The BGS, you mentioned this back in January, that there was an RFP out. And we really want to start moving, trying to figure out what to do with this property. and try to figure out with the town of Windsor what really needs to be done. Because we know some of those buildings are gonna have to be torn down regardless, even if we sell the property, some of those buildings will have to be torn down.
You're doing a great job of trying to sell it, but I've already asterisked in case,
Already asked one?
asterisked it.
Yep.
Just in case our committee needs to find some things. Thank you, Alex. Okay,
Thank you very much.
24 is, I'm gonna make sure that, line 24 is 1.4 million that we put in. And it's to add to the 700,000 that we had last year. This is for our Kevin Moore and our IT site. We last year made the decision, we wanted our IT operations to be consolidated. They are to move into the first floor at 132 State Street for a portion of that floor. The construction, we thought we had 700,000 that we had appropriated in previous capital bills for ADS. That ADS is not going to need all that money. We thought at the time last year, at this time, that those dollars would cover the renovations that would be needed for Kevin's operations. It is not enough money. An additional 1.4 million on top of that, for a total project cost of 2.1 million. Some of that, again, is due to time and material increases. And also where Kevin is located, it's part of a bigger room. So you need to build walls for a corridor, and then there would be some common area that could be used for Kevin or other entities within state government. But it's not complete fit up with that other space. But if you're doing an HVAC system, you're going to be doing it for that whole room, not just Kevin's piece, as well as carpeting and building the wall in the corridor. So it comes in about 1.4 million. So we added, we made this decision as a legislative branch to move Kevin and all of his operations and move the server from the basement of the State House into that space. But we've got to get the renovations done before we can do any of that. And then that frees up 9 Baldwin, where Kevin is working out of now. And Kevin can't move out of there until this space is done.
So what's that, who could do the 1.4?
Who what?
Who could do with the 1.4?
We work with BGS.
What was that?
We brought an estimate, I believe, 1.5.
Who went up?
That's not my understanding, but
I thought we came in with 1.5.
Okay. Well, we put in
When we started
1.4.
talking about other walls.
Yeah.
I had a note from previous testimony, that another 100 grand is necessary for that project on top of it.
Does that finish the common space more?
there's a wall, if you remember, Senator and Chair as well, when we walked in the space, there's those big post beams, structural beams. So the 1.4 only allows you to basically build a wall around what will be Kevin Moore's space. It does not allow us to build a wall that would then close off the other space. And there's issues with lighting and HVAC and fire suppression and a whole bunch of other reasons why it makes sense to build all of the walls at the same time.
Isn't there something about the floor as well?
The floor is in front of, we have to take the floor out, or it'll be lower in the future.
And you have to do it for the whole space. You can't just do that for Kevin's spot.
Correct.
You gotta do it for the whole space. So this is a commitment that we made last year, consolidating Kevin's operations, and our committee felt we really got to carry through on our commitment. So we put the money in. The other, that's it for the BGS section. If you go down to the DOC, okay, the DOC ADA compliance. I was confused with something else. That's line 32. This is new. This is the governor's recommend, 1.2 million. DOC is under a court order to comply with the ADA compliance within our correctional facilities. So the governor put in 1.2 million, we agreed. We hope this completes and does all the projects that are needed throughout all of our correctional facilities. But we'll know more next year because of time and materials. We're hoping the 1.2 covers it. Lines 33 is new. We put this in. There's been a lot of concerns occurring. We ended up at, I have $1 million. Did we end up at, yeah, we did end up at $1 million, right?
Is that your air conditioning? Yes,
Yeah, the
$1 million.
HVAC system. HVAC systems within our correctional facilities. There would really be about 5 of them, that 4 or 5 that would need a new system or even a system to begin with. I'm sure you've been aware that the working conditions within our correctional facilities are really under a lot of pressure now, particularly with our warmer summers and more humid summers, that the working conditions for our state employees, for our correctional staff is really, really becoming difficult, as well as for our inmate population. And the more those tensions can escalate in a confined spot, the more you impact the security of that facility and the well-being of our correctional staff as well as our inmates. In looking at what would be needed at our facilities for HVAC systems, it could range, for all the facilities together, it could range in a price range of 15 to 18 million. This 1 million is to have BGS start doing some design documents to really figure out what is needed where, in which facility, and really firm up those costs for that. You can't do one facility and not do others. You can't really pick and choose and say you're gonna do one facility and not the others. So this is, we put this in, and it's to help our workforce and also help in the security of the buildings and the facility and the operations of the facilities. Line 34 came in at a last minute request from House Commerce Committee. It's in the workforce bill, page 703. $4 million to go towards nursing school program simulation labs. These would be like within our college systems, could be Norwich, could be BTC, could be Castleton. The focus of the workforce bill is to really help our nursing employment situation. And it was appealing from that committee and in that bill that labs needed to be updated the simulation of the real world of being in an operating room.
Where would this be built?
The labs, what I'm hearing would be like Norwich University, BTC, Castleton. I'm not sure about UVM. It would be built within our colleges.
Is this including NBU Linden? I've heard.
It might be.
I was there for a press conference about the nursing program being introduced there in conjunction with SDRH and BTC.
That's the broad
Talking the
thinking.
same thing.
Originally, the Commerce Committee thought this would be eligible for ARPA dollars. And as they were working with the House Appropriations Committee, it came clear it would not be eligible, so they came to us. So the issue with this is we need to really clarify where that 4 million goes in terms of where is it administered. Is it BPS? Is it pass through to the colleges? It's not clear when the language was done and the money put in, who administers these dollars? Where's the 4 million appropriated to? So if you go down to section 4, line 39, major maintenance at our historic sites. This is an addition of 333. This came from Laura Trishman, did not come from the governor. She is seeing, again, some increase in time and material, but also some larger projects that they had not anticipated. One is at the Justin Morrow Homestead, the other one at Calvin Coolidge. In the Calvin Coolidge property, they are gearing up to celebrate the 100th anniversary with this being sworn in as U.S. President, and there's some major work that needs to be done there. So this is an increase that we have put in at their request. And everything else stays the same.
Where you put the page. Did your committee take any testimony on the kerfuffle over the Lois McClure?
No, we did not. We can, we've got time. Who would you recommend that we bring in?
Well, if you want both sides of the discussion, Susan McClure, who's the head of the Lake Champlain Maritime. Other side is Hilton Dyer. Alex, you're gonna have to reconstruct that witness list. There are some very passionate people who were associated with the original building of the boat, and they are very upset because the naval survey of the boat itself says it's fine, it needs upper body cosmetic work basically, but it's still a navigable boat. And the museum is taking the position that they're going to take it out of the water and probably chop it up to make a land exhibit out of it. The people who built it and serviced it are extremely upset. They believe they can raise their own funds in order to get it maintained. But they put on a really good pitch about how that has been something that has taken Vermont around the northeast quadrant and has been a tourist attraction of major proportions. So that kerfuffle is there. The board, for some reason or other, made this decision without contacting or dealing with any of those people that originally put it together. And at this point, there is a desire, say, to keep it afloat and to maybe offer some money to the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum with a proviso that says this comes to you if you change that decision. We haven't thought that out yet, but I'm just going to float that out there. Your community may want to listen to some of the folks. It's a hot button issue.
And
It's not going to be a lot of money that I'm talking about. It's just something that's.
And we appropriated money specifically to the McClure boat.
Yeah, through the
4
years.
years ago?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago?
But Hilton Dyer is convinced he can get money raised privately to maintain the boat.
So maybe Alex could send your witness list over to Phil?
Yeah.
Does that work?
You hear that, Alex?
Already doing it.
That works. So we can flip the page. Everything stays the same from what we did last year. And also, none of the governors, there was no governor recommend for any changes there. The one thing that we did look at was the State College Infrastructure Transformation Planning and Space Modification. We did, last year we put in 100,000 as a placeholder, just because they came in wanting money for their transformation planning, the space modification, the demolition. They didn't have anything in place. So last year we said, well, we'll put 100,000 as a placeholder and we'll look at your plans more in depth this session. So as we went through that, we're saying 900,000 is basically what they can get out the door this next year.
You take testimony on that
Yes,
report.
yes, we did. So if we had not had that placeholder in last year, assuming 1.1 million, we said, 900,000. Agency of Natural Resources, this is where it looks like there's a lot of changes, but there really isn't. It's just configured differently. So the drinking water, we kept that the same. The dam safety and hydrology projects is where it looks like it gets really confusing. We added the line of high and significant hazard dam safety improvements. So what is happening is, and we also added the line, Little Hosmer Dam. Little Hosmer Dam is part of, if you look in FY23 on line 76, Little Hosmer Dam is part of that 805,000.
Where's that at?
Where is that dam?
From here in Strasburg, right?
Yeah, northeast.
Yes.
So that's been planned to be done.
Bridge.
That's part of,
Names, God, I don't believe it.
that's part of the 805,000. So what we did, we want to make sure that dam gets done. So we put the line item for the 190,000 on line 78. That's Little Hosmer Dam. So the balance of that 805 minus 190, which is 600 and something, gets put towards the high and significant hazard dam improvements. There is now a new assessment, a new way of looking at our dams. And the state auditor has also looked at this and came in and spoke to us about our dam safety program
Yeah, we heard that.
and assessments. So this is the list that has been put out for these dams. There's about 21 of them that are owned by the Agency of Natural Resources. They're going to be looking at all of these. They're anticipating that in the red, there'll be high hazard, and in the gold, it's significant. But all of this can change once they do the risk assessment. They're going to be doing the risk assessment this summer and fall. And then, based on that risk assessment, maybe they'll be able to start doing some actual work. So we said, we will move the balance of that 805 minus that 190 with the governor's recommend for a total of 3.115 million. We don't know how much the assessment will get done and how much construction they will be able to do by next summer. Because they can't do much construction in the winter. And the priority standing of these dams can all change. And by doing the risk assessment, they'll know what work needs to be done.
Speaking of work, I just remembered Dick McCormick had my appointment this afternoon.
So that's the big change that occurred there. And I believe too, we did cut about $1 million there. I think the governor's recommend was 4.1. We did cut $1 million because of saying, wait a minute, you're not going to get this amount of work out the door. You've got to do the assessment first. You've really got to figure out what work needs to get done.
Gotcha.
So we tried to clean up the way it was presented. It was confusing the way the original spreadsheet. Line 79. This is a new addition, came in from the governor, 2.83398. This is our state match for the Federal Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. This is separate from ARPA. This is for our drinking water and clean water state revolving loan funds. Instead of our 20% match that we normally see, this is a 10% match. This 2.7, this 2.8 will match $28 million in federal dollars. This is going to be a 5-year program. I think the first 2 years or 3 years are 10% match. The remaining 2 years are 20% match. And I think what our total amount, 300 million, I think is what we are entitled to over 5 years.
355.
155 million. So this is our first round. So this came from the governor, and we kept the governor's recommend. We want to draw down as much money as we possibly can and not leave it on the table.
Can't pick on you, but the long trail this year, okay?
We're not doing anything.
That's what I'm saying. You can't holler at me, but you always holler at me when I put money in for the long trail.
They need money this year? Do they need money this year?
No, they're very good this year. Just want, I can't use that as a leverage to go all over my head for the last.
Oh,
couple
you
of
won't.
years. Hell,
Don't do that.
yeah. I know you. I know I am.
Or walleyes.
I know you pretty well.
Did you take money out of the walleye, guys?
No, we didn't touch it.
They don't care.
So let me go down for another line that's confusing. Line 85. Line 85. Yeah, this is confusing, so I'm gonna explain it. Don't try to figure it out on the
Rustic
spreadsheet.
cabins.
No, let me explain.
Another port.
We're trying to clean it up. We worked with Commissioner Snyder a few years ago when we first started this rustic cabin programs, pre-COVID. We put in $775,000 to do rustic cabins. Our intent was that Forest and Parks would work with our tech centers and have our tech center students build this. Well, COVID came along, it didn't flow out as we thought. It's gonna be more complicated than we thought. That $775,000 is sitting there, has not been used. So we spent a lot of time working on this. So the committee said, in working with the commissioner of Forest and Parks, how many cabins can you really build with the CTE programs that you see are coming up to the table? He figures around 200,000 of the 775. So we said, okay, we'll carve out that 200,000 from our previous capital appropriations. That's what you see here is the 200,000. That's for the CTE program, and we've got language that indicates that in the bill. We've reallocated the remaining 575,000. So it's not an increase to his budget. It's just clarifying previous appropriations that we did.
Okay, you spend it.
Well,
We warned him not to let you know that money had been spent.
it's taking longer to get the CTE program up. They're starting that now, but he's not gonna use all the 775,000 for that particular program. He had $500,000 last year for Rustic and $500,000 this year. So that other $500,000 we reallocated to the bill.
My fear this year is everything that we allocated next year, we're gonna come back and want more, because everything's gonna be over budget.
Everything's gonna be over
I can
budget.
see it, transportation, it's just gonna be crazy.
Yep.
We got the largest paving bill we ever had, 153 million. Losing around 100 million, I bet we won't do any more paving than 100 million, because costs are 40% is gonna be on paving.
So we might wanna think how we proceed with some of these projects in capital bill. The administration has to prioritize something if we're not around. Because some of these projects may not be done, and it may be a legislative wish to get them done. So if the cost is going up and we're not in session, what happens?
A lot of these projects, because they don't have the people, there's nothing.
They're not
Nobody out
there.
there. I've never seen anything like it.
We've got all this money for infrastructure, but we don't have the workforce to get it out.
Workforce, and it's double the cost.
And our drinking water and clean water issues are fun. Municipalities are gonna start seeing this. So that's what you see with the rustic cabins. It's not new money. It's reallocating basically what occurred in the past.
They're all in Springfield anyway, so.
That was a long time ago. So,
Who knew?
We got, they define preference for Springfield. Project.
oh, they could think they could-
We weren't for sure, but we go now.
She renamed some of her towns in her district. They don't call them Springfield anymore, they call them Fair.
So section 10, clean water. This is our $11 million section for clean water. 5.2 million of the 11 million is being picked up by ARPA funds. If you go to this sheet that Alex handed out. Okay. We've got some projects here that usually are picked up in our clean water section. The recommends come from the Clean Water Fund Board. And these were the recommends that came from the Clean Water Fund Board for both, for that total 11 million. So let me walk you through here. Water quality grants for agency of Hvac. There's 2.451781 for their water quality grants, but 200,000 on top of that is in the capital bill because those are for prep projects that are not eligible for ARPA dollars. So you'll see 200,000 on line 94, which is in addition to line 5 of this spreadsheet. Water quality grants for the agency of Hvac.
We do it all this federal money wasn't there this year.
I know.
It's just.
Well,
We're gonna find out next
I
year.
know, that's what I'm saying, and what's gonna happen, because
But
all you
this-
hear is federal.
this
money.
is within our 11 million
No, I-
normally, so it frees up 5.2 million of owned
So how many
dollars.
times have we heard the ARPA money? It's just, wow.
I know. Lines 96, that's our Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. You cannot match federal dollars with federal dollars, so that's our bonded dollars at 1.548. And the municipal pollution grants, we have 2.715 of bonded dollars for that, but there's 585,000 on top of that that will qualify for ARPA, and that's line 3 in this short spreadsheet. Then you flip it to the agency of natural resources, forests and parks. This is your forestry access roads. So what they did here was they went back to our FY22 budget of $500,000. That would qualify for ARPA, so they pulled that out. It is on our spreadsheet, the short one here, on line 4. Under FY22, you see $500,000. And then FY23, there's 700,000. So there's a total of 1.2 million for forestry access roads that will be picked up by ARPA and nothing in the capital. And then the HCB, the same thing occurs here on lines 101 in the capital bill. We have for FY23, 200,000, but there's an additional 200,000 of ARPA. Now it's an additional 600,000. That's a typo there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's an additional 600,000 from ARPA, which is on this little sheet.
So on 101, line 101,
There's
at 200 should be 6.
6. There's 2 million of our capital dollars, and there's an additional 600,000 in ARPA for 2.6 total. So of our $11 million that we would put aside for clean water, we are bonding 6.663. and capital dollar and ARPA dollars of 5.236. And those dollars are all appropriated, they're allocated in our bill, but they're appropriated in.
When's the Williston, when's it gonna break ground on that?
This summer,
Summer? It's all set to go. It's taking you for a year and a half, 2 years.
it's 12 to 18 months, is my memory off the top of my head.
Great, great move.
Is your reelection campaign?
Yeah,
You coincided with this event, reopening.
well, it's not my district, but I've been working on this project for
Yes,
20
you
years. This, they're gonna get out of that dump they're in. And, it's embarrassing where it is. Are we gonna sell that property for it?
We do have authority to sell.
Okay, that should bring some money in today's world.
Is the plan to still move across the street?
Up the hill, yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
The other side of the interstate, up the hill there.
I have a committee member that would like to use that old barracks for the women's reentry program and not sell
Talk about an old barracks, that's an old barracks. Let me tell you, you gotta put some money in that baby. Last time we gotta put windows in it.
that
Also
building.
prime real estate.
Demolished, it's gone.
it.
Yeah.
I'm
I went
just,
there one day, the windows, they could throw a cat through the window.
and you could be careful there.
That's a bigger asset to the ed fund than it is to anything else.
I do have a committee
Something
member.
built there that'll take
I
it.
just want to say, I do have a committee
And
member.
I have
that is-
explained to that committee member that that is my future Trader Joe's in Williston.
He really wants that.
It's also not large enough, we don't believe, for the footprint of a future building.
That's gonna bring some money. The only problem they have is traffic, and that's gonna be the issue. You're gonna have to have different entrance or something, because it's right
Connect to
there.
the Staples Waters.
Yeah, something like that to get there, because I don't know how the police haven't got killed going in and out of that place. It's just-
Turning
They were
left.
supposed to go to 617. They were supposed to go to 617. Remember the building, 617 with the health flag?
Okay, go right ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. So let's keep moving down to line 120 and 121. You can see a bag. This is for our Big E building. That's down in Springfield, Mass. And this is major maintenance. There's a major work that does need to be happening at this building. We're going to be celebrating the 100th anniversary of this back in 2029, I believe. So there's major electrical work that needs to be done. Just work throughout the whole building. Windows repairs, clapboards, roofing, the whole building really does need to be redone. So this is the governor's recommend of an additional 720,000 to what we put in for FY23 of the 350. And the 330,000 is also the governor's recommend for the agency of Hvac to begin a master plan for this building. There really needs to be looking at possibly ADA issues. I mentioned electrical issues, HVAC issues, circulation, and also the vendor space and flexibility in the spaces so that vendors now have different needs in those spaces than they did 30, 40 years ago. There's more electrical needs, there's more water needs, more refrigeration needs, also Wi-Fi on the internet thing. So it's,
We did take
Yeah,
a test.
yeah,
and
that's still only 330,000. With 330,000 for infrastructure.
In Springfield.
it's Mass, it's Mass, not Vermont, it's Mass. Massachusetts.
$30,000
On that palm card, you see, probably 330,000 at Springfield.
Not Vermont.
I think we're gonna have state buildings hire some planners full-time. We can pay for them for the next 30 years. Just hire 2, 3 full-time planners. I think that's the job that you ought to consider. Just
It
hire.
does require some sub-planners.
Some planners, you know, we have to study the planners.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring you down the line, 146. This is,
Skip right over the dry hydrant program.
I know, it all stayed the same, nothing changed.
I never could figure out what a dry hydrant was. One year I asked a dumb question, what's a dry hydrant?
Yeah, you got a good
I
answer.
thought they had water.
The 2 Aiken is where BGS used to be. We did a swap, end of last session where the legislature acquired 2 and 4 Aiken. And BGS moved into the 5th floor of 133 State Street. After we acquired that building, it came to light in the advisory committee over the summer that there is not a tube wiring in that building. So we have been, the sergeant at arms has been working to upgrade the wiring and sprinkler system and a variety of things in that building. The bulk of the wiring on the 1st and 2nd floor has been replaced. We still need to do the 3rd floor and other items in there, the sprinkler system and some other items. So in working with our sergeant at arms, we put in $185,000 to complete the work over there at 2 Aiken, so that at some point it will be occupied. So we negotiated this as a legislative body with the administration, not knowing that we had not been tubed in there.
Have you been down to see all the empty space we have here at the complex? Thinking about adding on the state house and all these empty, beautiful offices down here, they're empty.
The question is, how spread out do we want to be as a legislative body?
Well, move the cafeteria down there and use the cafeteria for office or for committee rooms. I mean, make it a mini cafeteria. I saw those offices, they're all empty down here, beautiful, empty. Nothing getting done. The biggest part of that office building is the police department. Of course, she's gonna have a half a dozen cars, so she needs a place to put a fleet of cars. Yeah.
You'll need a
How'd that
word.
escape your committee anyway?
How what?
How'd that escape your committee, the electric car or their automobile that they're
That
gonna have?
ended up in appropriations.
Yeah.
It never came to us.
We know that.
Never came to us.
I can't even believe that yet. I'm not done with that. Okay.
So, where are we here? We put the page. Whoops, there we go. What do you mean? We flip the page. And then you come into the reallocations, and I have a subcommittee of the committee that does a little deeper dive in this as the session progresses for reallocations. And they always find a few. So the total is 3.539, which is up about 2.2 million from what was the original governor's recommend. And some of that is the rustic cabins, some of that came from BGS. So I have a committee that does a little bit more digging.
You can't keep them occupied. See where that is.
You have a subcommittee for your committees?
I do.
Really?
Yeah, I have some.
Like me and Eagles going up to Wendy's and.
Yeah. We have a subcommittee, this committee without the chair. It works well.
I'm not going
We
there.
don't tell them when we're meeting.
I'm not going there. So then the rest
Good
is
enough.
the bond premium at 16.7. And then our total for FY23 is 78 million. And the total for the FY22 is 69.5 million. So that's the bond bit. Now flip it, and then we get to deal with another product. This is the other pot that came from ARPA, the 113 million for infrastructure projects. And this last year we had put in the language, which your chair mentioned, that we were hoping to divide this between the 3 branches of government. The administration proposed in this little piece, which is probably on the other side, 51.5 million for cell towers, 15.9 million for libraries, 44 million for community centers, and 1.5 for park connectivity projects within our forests and parks. So what we ended up doing after much conversation with many folks, we kept the forests and parks at 1.5. And I don't know if you received any testimony on this, but this is to really help our state parks that are in dead areas that have no Wi-Fi or cell service, to really help them get hooked in. The libraries is 15.9. This is to help them with broadband. It's to help with ADA compliance. They need to hire a couple people to get the program up and running and set up the parameters of the program. And so the dollars probably won't go out the door much before next spring. Libraries will have to apply to the Department of State Libraries for this fund. We eliminated the community centers, but in its place, we put in, if you go down to lines 200, there was a bill that came out of House Energy Technology, H518, that deals with energy efficiency programming within our municipalities. And it's 48 million, 48.4 to help weatherize our municipally owned buildings, change out possibly their heating systems so they're into renewables. It's building on top of a program that's already in BGS for grant monies to go out to these communities for upgrading their buildings for energy efficiency. And there is, they worked with BGS on this to bring on a couple people that will be paid for by Efficiency Vermont, just administer this program.
Talking capital dollars to pay those people?
No, Efficiency Vermont's paying for it. It's not part of the 48.4 million. Separate from that. Lines 197, this was Department of Public Service. This, let me jump. Let me not do that one just yet. I'll go to 198, line 198. This is for cell towers. The governor has proposed 51.5 million. There's real concerns you're not going to be able to site 100 cell towers. Our Energy and Technology Committee made a recommend about 20 cell towers is really what they could get out. 1.5 of the 21.5 is for the Department of Public Service to do data collection and mapping to figure out where there are dead spots and where they could put the towers. And then the 20 million is to go out and do the towers and provide the subsidies for that. Then we did put in on lines 199, 50,000 for the Windsor State property for the planning. And that was what your chair referred to earlier. And this will go to the Mouse County Regional Commission for that too.
The Regional Commission covers Springfield, right?
Yes, it does. It does. So then we started looking at other items that we were thinking would qualify for the 113. Now hold on to your hat. We were thinking of the State House expansion.
Oh,
I know. We were looking at the judiciary HVAC system of 5.7. Thought this would qualify for the 113. And also the Historical Society for their HVAC system at 450,000. We thought that those three items would qualify for this 113. In working with Joint Fiscal Office as well as our legal counsel, Becky Wassman, it's really clear that the criteria for the 113 is very, very specific, and the administration files and makes and applies for these dollars. They have to apply for this in September. We have to make sure that these projects qualify and meet the criteria. Those 3 projects did not meet the criteria, so they got moved to the appropriations bill. In the appropriations bill, there was some broadband construction programs within the Department of Public Safety. That's on line 197. For 25.6 million that would qualify for our 113. So we just switched it. So that's what shows up here. So we are tied in with the appropriations bill pretty tight.
Your committee support the state house expansion.
Yes.
$30 million you're willing to spend for what?
The plan, the thinking is, and we've got 1.5 million that's already been appropriated. We'll know more come next January. But the plan, the thinking is you build a floor above the cafeteria. And only, you don't go out, you do that space. Move the cafeteria, the dining area, service area, and the kitchen up there. Because what we have now just isn't adequate. And then you convert all of that space into 5 committee rooms. And you also look at the smaller committee rooms currently, which is my old room, the room across the hall from me, and the 2 upstairs in a tiny room. But those 4 committee rooms, if you tear down the walls on both sides and build the wall in the middle, extends the 2 adjoining committee rooms and creates a larger committee room there. That's the thinking. It's not to do what we were looking at back in.
But still $30 million
I know.
or more, 40 million. Now we're talking 40 or 50 million for another floor, which you could take that cafeteria, make it a mini cafeteria, just put sandwiches or coffee or whatever. And you don't have to eat up there. You can eat down your committee rooms. And there's a cafeteria right down across the street. That's one of the major meals. You go down there for lunchtime. That's what we're talking about.
The one thing that we're really finding is there's a lot of mobility issues with members. And to go out the building, particularly in the winter
We'll
time.
make it a mini cafeteria up there. You don't have to have seating. There's no seating now. People are eating elsewhere. They take their food back with them to their committee rooms.
We don't know what the world's gonna look like after COVID. Right now, a lot of folks, we're not getting in the folks that we normally do with lobbyists and advocates and school groups and the public coming in because we're still under the whole COVID issue. So we really don't know what's going to happen. And a lot of discussions occur in the cafeteria with members, between members, with lobbyists, and even our Senate colleagues. There's a lot of.
So we'll tell the voters we're doing it so we can bullshit between ourselves in the cafeteria.
I think it's to make it more accessible for Vermonters to access their state government. That's really the
That's a
issue.
spin right there. Yeah. Alex, you don't believe that.
My concern is if you expand the building, and we've been through this, whenever you expand the building, more people are going to come in. We went through this in the late 80s when we built that cafeteria.
I'm just trying to justify spending $40–50 million. You were talking 3–4 million. I could see something. Well, you're talking $50 million. And it's going to be that if we talk about 30 today. It's going to be 50.
The House committee rooms are very, very small.
Oh, look, you took over the State House. Now you got room 11. You got the other room. You got the best
And I
rooms
hope
in the
that's
house.
temporary. I hope that's temporary. That was the plan. It is temporary.
How's the house going to
Just
take
for
good
COVID.
care of?
It's just for COVID.
Bobby Starr's still in the cloakroom.
Hopefully next year.
We borrow it.
Yeah,
Right.
you're.
Well, it's actually tough because I left my papers there and realized like, oh, I couldn't pick those up, move them somewhere else. And like, so it sounds like it's not, but we leave our stuff here, we walk out.
Well, Alice did a good job. I don't know what took you 3 months to do it, but he did a good job.
And I'm sure there's some language in the bill that I just haven't gone over, but a lot of the language is connected with the moving pieces that we've got here.
She's on the call. She's just not visible because her camera's on.
I don't know whether she wanted to go through the language with us or what. Hi, Becky.
Hi.
Hey, I saw Peg Flurry over the weekend.
Oh, did you see Peg? Oh, gee, I haven't talked to her.
How's she doing?
Well, she's doing well.
That's great.
Straighten out.
I miss her.
She's, we got a big hug and all that, good thing, so we're.
She's a nice person. I go.
Do you have anything else you want to tell us before we jump in? Can I get to the elephant in the room? And talk about the Dear Jane letter that we got?
You got a Dear Joe letter?
It says Dear Jane, I've just copied. I don't know. That
Sure.
Jane, as they say.
Sure. You still want me sitting here or you want me on the side?
Well, that's a good question. At some point, I gotta figure out what your committee decided to do and why. I'm sure Secretary Clauser is gonna tell us that
The
why
cash
that's not
fund?
a great idea, yeah.
The cash fund. We worked with the House Appropriations Committee and their thinking was that instead of going through this whole convoluted thing, of setting up a cash fund, if there's general fund dollars that are available, just put those general fund dollars that particular year for those projects in the capital. In budget adjustment that they did, they had 25 million that they put aside for debt reduction. Now that could be paying off the callable bonds, that could be paying some construction projects in our capital bill. So they had that as a thought. And the other part too, the way that the state treasurer, this is her proposal, the cash fund, and the formula for that is her proposal, that you take 4% of the general fund dollars and you minus your debt service from that. There's one other part to that formula, and then you have X amount that you put into the cash fund. And the concern from the Appropriations Committee was, well, one year you're gonna have general fund dollars that you can do that. Other years you're gonna be so strapped that it's gonna restrict so much of the general fund that you end up not doing it. So there's a lot of conversations with the Appropriations Committee about this.
Question for me is, we're just getting this bill now. We were sold on the idea. When the treasurer came in initially, and secretary came in. I don't know where our approach committee is. I'm just picking up bits and pieces. Satisfied that they have yet to have a full-throated discussion on it. But at the moment, I don't want us to end up as the last bill in the building that hasn't been resolved yet. I want to figure out how to move this right along.
I second that one, because I don't want to end up with the last bill either, because it'll become a Christmas tree. And there, on that.
Okay,
But that was how it all unfolded on the House side.
has Beth Pierce weighed in on that conversation?
No, we notified her, and we being the chair of Appropriations Committee and myself, and she's disappointed. But that's as far as it went. And we did, the chair of Appropriations and myself did let her know that there just wasn't the support to do that. The other concern is too, if you do have this cash fund, how do you put parameters around it so there isn't a fee hindrance with extra money on the bottom line? Because that's what's happening in appropriations. You can see it with the ARPA dollars. You can see it everywhere. So if people realize it's a pot of money, even though it's bonded, it's capacity to bond, it could be tapped. Or there's a great word, notwithstanding. We won't put any money into it.
Well, so where would it be today if we still did school funding?
I know.
Imagine that, all the years we did the capital approval for schools. And we haven't done that in how many years?
Well, the push is on to
I
start.
mean, sooner or later, that someone's gonna have to address that school, because we did it for
It's gonna be a big ticket item.
Wow, that, we used to give 50 million, 40 million, 30 million, all kinds of money for that. And that hasn't been around. Sooner or later, that's gonna hit the fan.
And people are talking about it, trying to figure out how to pay for it.
And schools aren't cheap.
No, it's like.
$400 a square foot.
So look at Burlington, you're talking about $200 million plus 29 million to tear the school down. 229 million.
So if we did 30% of eligible costs, which we don't know what would be eligible
That's right.
anymore, because
$7
this,
million bucks or so.
because the State Board of Education hasn't worked on this in 8 years. So they don't even the folks who are there now
It's
weren't.
gonna hit,
aware
too.
yet.
Sooner or later, it's gonna hit.
And there's no one in the agency of ed that has worked like Kathy Hilgendorf and Wanda. I mean, they provided a lot of technical
Gee,
support to your school boards. And we don't have that on the state level anymore.
that's amazing. It's been that many years.
That's where we are. That was the conversations that occurred about the cash with our appropriations committee.
Well, I think that conversation is gonna be a little deeper.
Yeah, no, I'm just bring it up for.
In fact, Alex probably ought to have a treasurer back in and talk about her opinion.
Can do.
Anything else you need to tell us? As always, we appreciate you coming by. Feel free to take a piece of candy.
Well, I want to go out and haul, cut a deal, do it right now.
Yeah, not quite
We
ready.
can dance next 3 weeks.
Little too early.
You
You
can
don't
deal
have your
Early, you gotta
marching
wait.
orders yet. You gotta wait.
Right, you gotta wait. You gotta wait. But we will get someone in, we'll get the folks for the McClure. And I hope my presentation was clear enough.
Good job, thank you.
Yeah. Just so you know, I'm thinking of McClure somewhere in the 50 grand range. Just so you know.
How do I deal with Becky says?
Well, they prevented us from sinking a boat last time. Now we've got to try to keep one.
Yeah, why is it always about boats?
Not my problem.
Let's see what they say now on keeping it close.
If you don't want his name on the boat, I think that's what he's. going
Yeah,
for.
vessel, it's a vessel.
Yeah, Benny for governor.
Yeah.
The SS Benny.
Yeah.
It's a big banner on the
The
side.
weather started getting rough.
Becky, how much time do you need to do a walk through the language? Because I've got the commissioner of corrections online. He was supposed to get started at 2. We're obviously a little over time. And I'm trying to juggle and let one of you go.
If you just want me to go through the language part of the bill, I don't think that will take very long.
Okay, Commissioner Demo, do you have any place you've really got to be?
Hey, good afternoon. I have something at 3:30, but I think I am free until then.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind hanging around for a bit, I'm gonna let Becky take us on a little walk through the language.
Sure thing.
But, Madam Secretary, did you want to add in anything at this point?
So I'm happy to chat about the administration's position with respect to the cash fund, if that would be helpful now, or I can.
I think it would be helpful now, just so we can get some flavor for what's going on. So
Sure.
please come on up. Becky, hang on, we'll be right with you.
So good afternoon again, for the record. My name is Kristen Klauser. I'm the Secretary of Administration. And just very quickly to address some of the House Corrections and Institutions Committee's presentation, I would agree with Chair Emmons. I will say all of the projects within the governor's recommended capital budget BAA have been funded, which we appreciate. There are a couple of projects where, there was $100,000 here and there shaved off, but all of the projects have been funded, and we appreciate the work that the House did on those. What's the big difference between the House's proposed capital bill and what the governor recommended is the House added quite a few projects, which Chair Emmons talked about today. And the result of those additions spend all of the money available. So the entire recommended bonding capacity by CDAC, as well as the bond premium. And you'll recall from when I spoke to you earlier in January that the governor's recommended capital bill BAA left about $10 million on the bottom line for bonding capacity. And that was through both the use of the cash fund and moving some of the ARPA swaps, which are included, and the chair referenced. So those were included in the House bill, but it was the ARPA swaps, the utilization of the cash fund, and moving the BGS A&E line over to the general fund. So that was done. That the House included the reduction of that line item, but the money was spent and allocated to other projects. So I would say that the biggest disappointment, as we indicated in the Dear Jane letter, is that there is no utilization of a cash fund in this capital bill BAA. And to just very quickly address some of the concerns that I think were raised by the House committee when looking into this. Right now, I'll start with the 4%. The proposal that was worked on by the administration with the help and advice and collaboration of the Treasurer's Office would use a 4%, the general fund, 4% transfer to pay for debt service, and then the remainder would be funded into the cash fund. That was coupled with paying off $20 million of GO bonds. That's included in the BAA. It's in waterfall language, but it's included in the BAA. To really maximize that debt reduction, we would use some of the interest savings from those callable bonds to help pay for the cash fund moving forward. But I think what is most important is when there are concerns raised about, are we going to have the capacity to continue to transfer 4% in years to come? The most important thing to remember is through the projections that we worked on with the Treasurer's Office, in addition to working with JFO on those. If we do nothing, meaning status quo, we spend all the money like we do every year, we will be paying more than 4% in general fund next year and every year thereafter. Because just to pay for our debt service will require, projections will require more than 4%. If we utilize the cash fund, which does require a $6.2 million transfer from general fund, so it will definitely require some cooperation and collaboration with appropriations committees. But if we do that transfer, then we will be just under 4% in debt service and continue to be under 4% in debt service if we continue to utilize the cash fund as intended, which is an average of about $7 million a year. So I just think it's important to remember that we are as concerned as everyone else is that our financial position will not be as good as it is today in the future. And the cash fund is a way to plan and prepare for that. Because not only does it allow us to kind of use some of this surplus to pay down our debt, reap the savings of that, start reducing our bonding capacity, it frees up bonding capacity in the future. If we save some and continue to save some in years when we have surplus, then we'll have more bonding capacity when we really need it, which are in those very tight years. And we'll have capitalized on the years that we have some surplus and used that cash fund to reduce our debt service, so that not only have we freed up some bonding capacity in future years, but we also have reduced our debt service payment and are therefore paying less general fund towards debt service already in the out years. So the administration feels strongly that there's some really good financial savings that can be gained from utilization of the cash fund. And I would just say that that's our biggest disappointment with respect to the bill. It's not really related to projects, just the fact that the cash fund didn't make it in, and that we didn't reduce couple that savings with some reduction in bonding capacity.
What was the cash, $10 million?
So we had $10 million on the bottom line as preserving bonding capacity, which is the 6 point.
Wasn't gonna be spent.
That's right. And that's the 6.2, which is the cash fund, plus the 3.8, which is the BGS architecture and engineering line item that has shifted over to BGS base budget in the general fund because it pays for staff.
So that 10 million was there, and now that's not there, that's gone.
That's right.
The house is spent, you spent that.
That's a 9.6 or whatever it was.
No, it's not the 9.6. That was already in the
Okay.
governor's budget.
That's right. The original 9.6 that Chairman referred to, those are ups, time and material ups that were included in the governor's recommend.
So that cash is not there anymore, the bottom line.
That's right, the reserve, the
Yeah.
$10 million reservation of bond capacity, meaning we didn't spend $10 million, is no longer there. It has been spent through other projects.
Okay, just so I get it clear in my mind. how this works.
So I think this committee is gonna have some conversation about that. I don't want to make anybody promises at this point. Looking at the logistical problem of House approach and House HCI, having made a decision, we've never had any commitment from our own appropriations committee. Logistically, that could become a nightmare trying to change that decision around. Having said that, I'm trying to assess, if we can't, what happens with the administration at the end of the day with the capital bill. I don't think any of us want to be here in July asking that same question. So I'm just going to plant the seed. We're going to talk about it and see where we go from there. But hoping everybody is keeping that conversation open.
And we are happy to come back and talk more. We have charts and projections. We can talk more specifically about the financial projections. We've also extended that same ask to the Appropriations Committee so that we can go in and talk about the cash fund there as well.
Are you scheduled to do that yet?
Not yet. I've also been speaking to the treasurer, who's happy to come in. We can do it together, or you can do it separately.
Talk to Jane about that. Maybe we ought to have a joint meeting. Get all the players back in for another conversation. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming. I'm sure we'll see you
Thanks for
again.
having me. Yes, that's right.
All right, Becky, you are up. Welcome back. Where you
Thanks.
been for the past 3 months? I know the answer to that question.
So many different committees.
We haven't forgotten that you think of us as the best of the two committees.
Yeah, just,
Oh, wait a minute.
remember Alice is still here, so if you got anything to say.
I'm not saying anything. I love all the committees I work with, and I'm really glad to be here today.
You running for office?
Yes, 3 kids.
All right,
Diplomatic when you have 3.
so we have been away from you for a while, and the language portion of this, I wish Senator McCormick was actually here.
Yeah.
But the language portion is always something that we have to deal with as well, and I guess I'm going to leave it to you to take us through the actual words.
Sure.
We may have to have you back to go through it again when Senator McCormick returns.
That'd be fine. So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. I was thinking if it's okay, I can share my screen because that might be easier, unless you all. Is that okay? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Sure, yeah, please.
I'm giving you permission. You're good to go.
Okay. And also, I did prepare a section summary of the bill. which I sent to Alex. So I don't know if you have that, but I can resend it if you need it.
Did we get a copy of that, Alex?
Yeah, we did. It's on the committee documents page. I can print one out for everybody.
Probably ought to have a hard copy of that.
So I know you might be short on time right now, so I just wanted to ask, I can start the part of the bill that is, I guess, technically the money part that just goes through the federal funding pieces of the bill, or I can just jump to the more sort of traditional policy language, whatever makes most sense with your timing.
Let's go with whatever shorter version of that you can deliver.
Okay, so the shorter version, I think, is just jumping to section 16, and then I'm happy to come back whenever you have time for me to go through the other parts of the bill. So let me just, without making you dizzy, scroll through this. Section 16 of the bill is where the sort of more policy language parts of the bill start. There are a lot of citations here. So this is amending session law that goes back to 2013. And you'll see on the top of page 21 here, there's a change in an effective date. And so what this section is doing is it is amending the sunset date to move the funding of engineering costs from the capital bill to the budget. And that is in last year's bill, you had changed that date from July 1st to July 1st, 2023. And this is moving it back to June 30th, 2022. And that is because the budget this year is actually taking on those engineering costs. So it's sort of putting this provision into effect. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'll move on to section 17 of the bill. In last year's capital bill, there was language authorizing BGS to sell 13 Baldwin Street. This is amending that section from last year, so it's amending section 21A by also authorizing BGS to sell 1416 Baldwin Street in addition to 13 Baldwin Street. And the proceeds from the sales of those properties would go back to future capital construction projects.
Can I freeze you there for a moment and ask Chair Emmons, 9 Baldwin Street? Did you guys have any conversation on 9 Baldwin Street?
We did, that's where Kevin Moore is, and we don't want to let go of that building until he's actually moved into the 133.
But the game plan is still, are you able to put language in that talks about selling it contingent upon his removal?
I mean, not really, he's not gonna be able to move into 133 State Street until we really get back there next week. So
But is the game plan to vacate it upon his leaving?
we had not discussed that because we want to get 133 set up first before we can get authority to sell 9 Baldwin. That was our, let's get him settled first, and then next year, when we do the capital bill.
I'm trying to figure out a way to fast track something to avoid labor and material delays down the road. And I don't know whether your committee would consider fashioning some kind of language that is targeting that building for sale upon his exit. I'm just trying to see if there isn't a way to fast track something down the road. Unless you guys had some other plan for the building, and I don't think you do.
I don't know of any plan at this point. That's not to say there might not be. but
Okay, well, it may be something else for you guys to talk about amongst the Lois McClure. Lois. Just a thought. Okay, we're back to you. All right.
Moving on to section 18 of the bill. This is adding a new section 25B. And this section is adding some intent language with respect to BGS implementing strategies for reducing carbon intensity in buildings that are under the jurisdiction of BGS. So the intent is that they implement these strategies as soon as practicable to reduce carbon intensity in buildings. And these strategies would include the use of non-fossil fuel alternatives when installing or replacing any space conditioning or water heating systems. And another possible strategy would be carbon storing and least embodied carbon materials as evidenced by appropriate documentation from contractors and suppliers when constructing, renovating, or substantially repairing a building or facility. Subsection B also has intent language that both the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation and the Agency of Transportation would use the technical assistance of the State Energy Management Program for eligible projects.
Can I ask Chair Emmons again, section 18A1, that surfacing in your committee as a result of any particular individual or?
there was a bill in our committee, H600, that would require the Department of BGS, Department of Forest and Parks, and AOT to do life cycle costing when they're looking at replacing heating systems or HVAC systems. We took testimony from all three entities. They're currently putting in as many renewable items as that's their goal, be it with HVAC or heating systems. And so some of this is already being done. We decided not to do the bill, but there was interest in putting some language like this in the capital bill.
Okay. It's not committing it. The word may appears in the line, so I'm assuming there really isn't any lot of flack as a result of that.
And this is session law.
Okay, Beck, sorry.
It's session law and it's just intent language.
Yep.
So section 19 of the bill is connected to some reallocations of funds that I think you heard about for the Rustic cabin construction program. So in the 2019 Capital Bill Act 42, there was this appropriation of close to $800,000 for the Rustic cabin construction program. And at the time, I think there was an understanding that this would be done in conjunction with career technical, with CTEs to help with the construction for this program. It doesn't appear that that language was ever in the bill at the time, although that was the understanding. So in section 6 of this bill, there is $200,000 that was added to the Rustic cabin construction program amount, and some language that was added that said that that program should be done with using the CTEs for the program to sort of convey that intent that was there a couple of years ago. And then the remaining amount was reallocated in section 14 of the bill, which is the reallocation section of the bill. There was some amount that was left over that was unspent, that was spent already that couldn't be reallocated, and that is represented here with that $22,000. So this is just kind of cleaning up the reallocation from the previous year capital bills appropriation for Rustic cabin construction program.
Senator Ingles has a question.
Well, for Chair, so that's been a pretty profitable program, but when you spoke with them, they could only do, they only felt that they could build $200,000 worth of them.
That's just with your CTE program,
Okay,
just that.
yeah,
That's separate from the 500,000.
okay,
The 500,000 they're doing on their own, they contract out.
okay.
But to get your tech centers and also work with your students, and the students change in a semester, we worked with Department of Forest and Parks with the commissioner, and it came out at 200,000.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, Beck.
Okay, so section 20 of the bill is adding language to create the critical communications infrastructure program. And this is connected to section 13, where there are appropriations made from the ARPA Capital Projects Fund. And one of the appropriations there is to the Department of Public Service. I believe it's 21.5 million for the critical communications infrastructure program. So this language is actually establishing that program and the purpose. So on the top of page 23, it has the purpose of that program as improving availability of commercial mobile wireless voice services in areas where those services are currently unavailable. Subsection B has DPS in cooperation with AOT, evaluating CMRS through a driving test of all federal aid highways, prioritizing certain road segments, retaining experts to identify search rings to deploy, in which towers could be deployed to provide mobile wireless service to those prioritized road segments. Subsection C has the department developing a program to competitively award grants to facility-based carriers and tower operators that results in the deployment of new wireless facilities in areas identified for priority in accordance with subsection B of this section. And the department will ensure that funding is awarded in a manner that ensures wireless voice coverage from national facilities-based CMRS carriers, provides coverage to underserved areas of all Vermont counties, and provides low cost or free access to some facilities by Vermont public safety organizations. Subsection D allows the Commissioner of Public Service to retain outside consultants for assistance with the program. And the Commissioner is also able to consider neutral host networks in areas that cannot otherwise be supported by the program.
The Commissioner's ability to retain folks, is that covered by money we are giving the Commissioner, or is that coming from elsewhere?
So the money that's going to the program is ARPA Capital Projects funds.
Okay.
I'm not sure how the outside consultants would be paid for, but since those are coming from that pot of federal funds, there is a limit on the amount of administrative costs that can be used from that pot of money. So I think if they do use those funds to retain consultants, then it would just have to be within compliance with the federal law and guidance.
Who's overseeing all of that?
This particular program or the appropriations of those federal funds?
Well, let's start with this particular program. How is that expenditure being governed?
The administration will be preparing, I think it's called a grant program plan to Treasury, I believe, to sort of apply for the programs that we are appropriating money to. And there has to be approval for those programs. I think that there is an appeal process if for some reason the federal government does not approve it. But in essence, I think the administration through finance and management is the one who is making sure that those requirements would be met. That being said, the legislature has also vetted these projects to make sure that we believe that they also meet those requirements.
All right. We are obviously going to have you back. I want to plant a seed with you, though. The conversations surrounding the Lois McClure, if we dangle a sum of money out there, getting language in that puts in a proviso that it's released if the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum switches its current intent to bust up the Lois McClure. I don't know how to word that just yet, but it's just something I would like you to be thinking about, because I'm going to pursue that path as my last gasp effort to keep a boat afloat on Lake Champlain.
Art Cohen gave us some language. He gave us some language. You seen it?
I've never seen it.
Yeah. Alex, did you give that language to, I know I got a copy of it. Art Cohen.
Art Cohen language?
Art code, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
You might want to send that to Becky and let her start chewing on it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, and I apologize that I'm not familiar with this, but is this similar to the is it being sunk? Like a
Carry
vessel?
the cake.
Funny you should say that.
That's a good opening for you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you've been spending way too much time in the House committee. That's the basic problem. But this is the situation. The Lois McClure was built by a group of very passionate individuals who not only built it, but then serviced it and manned it during its lifetime. And the board at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum suddenly up and decided they were going to take it out of the water and probably bust it up to make exhibits on land for people to see. But there was a naval survey done of the boat. The boat is still perfectly navigable. It needs some cosmetic work. But the folks who were associated with the building of the boat believe they can come up with the funds necessary to do that and to keep it going for a fairly long while. So the question is whether or not we're going to take it out of the water and bust it up, or keep it afloat, because it is a very valuable tool in Vermont's tourism presentations around the northeast quadrant of the US. And
I didn't think they were asking for money.
they are, well, the Lake Champlain Museum always wants money
Yeah, they always.
for preserving wrecks. So this is not for the purpose of redoing the Lois McClure. It's for the purpose of saying to them, we're going to dangle this money out in front of you, and if you accept it, it's on the proviso that the Lois McClure decision is switched back to keeping it afloat and letting it do what they need.
You want to dangle money out front?
That's the idea. But with the purpose of preserving a wreck or two underwater there. That's the, they already have money.
We could have a
donated.
ferry for nothing. Last year, they wanted to give you a ferry instead of bury. Kill.
Well, we
$1 million
house override that.
$50,000.
Anyway, if you get that language from Art Cohen, if you could just keep that in the back of your head, because we're gonna have some more conversation about it.
Sure, I look forward to another maritime conflict.
I'll bet you do. All right, thanks, Beck.
Thank you.
Put your eye patch on, you pirate.
Yeah. I did have other witnesses who were on my list, and I don't know whether Dan, Commissioner Fitch, Eric, you guys wanted to have any contribution to this conversation at this stage. We are obviously going to have you back for more conversation. But is there anybody that wants to weigh in right now?
We're bench warmers today.
I've noticed that.
It's actually a comfortable bench, though, more comfortable than on the house side.
You should try our Senate chairs in the chamber and compare them to those House chairs.
We haven't been in our old committee room.
You reach down below, they have like little leg things that kick
Well, you
out.
know, it'd be great for that, and some snacks over here, you know, be lovely.
Has Russ left any in that basket over?
Not much.
I
Very
might
well.
sneak another piece of candy.
You are welcome to candy.
Thank you.
Uh,
Werther's Originals are my favorite.
Alcohol.
I did actually hit
That's
one.
nice.
I already had one. I had one already.
So
Brian Searle's favorite.
we're gonna switch gears, committee. Anybody need to take a break?
I'll put that to my world.
If not, we're going to say hello to Commissioner Demmel.
Right. Good luck with all that.
Switch gears to talk about Section 3 specifics with the Agency of Human Services Department of Corrections. We are also graced by the presence of Rachel Feldman.
Yeah, I'll go deal with her.
Welcome to Senate Institute.
Very good.
In person in 3 days is your first time?
I'm actually an avatar.
Okay, all right.
She's running corrections.
Wow, all right.
Commissioners come and
Good
go, but
job.
Rachel's still there.
You're doing a good job, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner, welcome to Senate Institutions. I'm hoping you're still there. Haven't fallen asleep somewhere along the way.
He's there, he's probably doing 5 other things at the same time.
You know, while I'm looking in this direction, I looked up to the ceiling and I realized the molding on the right side isn't quite the distance as the molding on the left side as it comes out of the corner.
Eric picked your block, maybe you could climb up there.
I don't know whether that's just my visual impression, but
And this thing over here at the bump out.
it was like an inch or two longer on the left-hand side from where I'm sitting right now.
I'd have to get up there and measure myself to know.
This used to be the supply closet, right?
Yeah, and Vince will tell you that he transformed it into the room that we're in now. And when he said that, I began looking closer at the actual walls and I'm thinking, somebody didn't do something.
This does look like Vince's work.
Yeah.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Demmel is on a call and is gonna have to jump to his next meeting, so Matt D'Agostino, our interim deputy commissioner, will be taking the point.
Okay. Matt, welcome to Senate Institutions. You know the routine, but just a reminder, if you could introduce yourself and let the YouTube world know who you are.
Certainly, thank you. Good afternoon. Matt D'Agostino, Interim Deputy Commissioner of Corrections.
We are talking about Section 3 of the capital bills spreadsheet, for those of you who want to jump in here. And Matt, I don't know whether you've got any remarks that were planned or the commissioner was going to do that, or if you're totally in the dark, we have Rachel here anyway, and maybe she wrote up whatever the commissioner was going to write about.
So I think the plan was just to go through the line items in this section for the committee, and I'm happy to do that and walk through and answer any questions that you might have about these. There's most of them are actually the first two, the Women's Correctional Facility Replacement, $1 million, as well as the statewide correctional facility life safety and security needs, $200,000, are not new items. These were in the 22 capital bill as part of the 22 and 23 requests. There's been no change to those. So unless there's questions about status of those or anything else, I'd move on to, well, actually, I guess the next one that I would move to is item number 4 on the list, though the BGS folks may have more to contribute in terms of some of the other items that are in this section.
Let me stop you for just a second. The women's facility, we have not heard any kind of an update in a long time. Can you tell us where that project is right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I defer to BGS if they have any additional comment, but in terms of the Women's Correctional Facility Replacement, there was a study by HOK done last year, I believe kind of toward the end of the session last year. They provided their final update and reports. And from that was an RFP that the BGS released more recently for the next stage of this work, next phase of this work. To my understanding, the RFP period, the response period has closed and the bids have been received, but I don't have more information in terms of, my understanding is they're reviewing those and working toward awarding a contract to a vendor, but I don't have more information than that in terms of status of that.
Commissioner Fitch, could you weigh in there?
I certainly can, Mr. Chairman. So by the way, Deputy Commissioner, sorry you're interim, and I think I read that you're leaving, which is really unfortunate because you've been fantastic to work with, so you will be missed. But you were spot on, is exactly where we're at. So we issued an RFP. We did get multiple responses. Those responses, the committee, I believe, met last week. They have selected the vendor they plan to move forward with, and now we're in the process of executing the contract. The goal is to have the planning and programming, well, for this very, very high level planning and programming study done before the next session. Or at the very least, if it gets slightly delayed, we would make sure, and we've told House Corrections and institutions that we would definitely have it done before the bill process and makes it here, because last year that didn't happen. And they want to ensure that it does. So the goal is before the session, but we do have a little fudge factor in the schedule if we need it.
Chosen a site yet?
That is the whole point of doing this study, right? So you have multiple correctional facilities around the state. And so you have to think about the siting of the reentry and women's correctional in the context of all the existing facilities that you have. Do you want to have them together? Do you want to have them separate? Do you want to have men's and women's together? There's a lot of different things that come into play when it comes to making an ultimate recommendation on how we want to move forward with siting for the women's correctional and a women's reentry. And the community, that is a great point, Senator.
Because there's no sense of pursuing like we tried Windsor, that's, they should want it. St. Albans still wants facilities, right? They haven't been.
St. Albans town is very open.
You do, your way?
St. Albans did actually reach out to me last summer and said they were interested in having a dialogue.
Newport's very nice that time of year.
Don't try Newbury. I'm good.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Downtown Newport, the whole area.
Well, it don't matter, we put wherever you like, we'll make it work, we'll take
Well,
it.
I think
Bring
it's
us your whole
important
message.
For sale.
that,
This is one of the most important decisions we will have to make on the future moving forward, is what is our recommendations for siting of these facilities? And if we don't get this right, you're gonna be caught in years of spinning.
That's right, and unless you got someone that wants it, there's no sense of pursuing it, because you're gonna be tangled in appeals for the next 10 years. I've seen that happen over the years, so get a community that's receptive and go for it, because boy.
well, part of the discussion 12 years ago, when we moved them from St. Albans to
Just be with it.
you gotta have a
Services.
community and all the support services that are wrapped around there. And there are a lot of places in the state
Right,
that
they
just
don't
don't have that, so.
Well, no, man, workforce issues, not that we're having great luck there now, but we are one of the few growing corners of the state.
We do consider workforce in the siting process as well.
Is the State Employees Association involved in any of that conversation?
I would have to just defer to DOC in terms of, they're the ones that will be doing sort of the outreach, if you will.
So Rachel Colgan, Principal Assistant and Public Information Officer for DOC. In terms of the SEA being involved, we are working with our stakeholders and outside partners on the programming and the design from a strategic standpoint at DOC. But right now, that is putting the cart before the horse. We have to have a design, we need to have a prospective site, but there will be weigh-in, and there's already a process started for that.
So Matt, all the commissioners with us now too. I'm curious, when did you guys actually start training Rachel Feldman to be an official witness and actually sound like an official witness?
You made a good
When did that happen?
pick. You made a good pick. She's a wonderful person.
Commissioner, welcome back. I don't know if you wanted to jump in here, or we were walking through section 3 with Matt and got caught up on the women's facility, so we didn't get very far.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I apologize. I had to step away for a minute. I actually got a phone call from one of your legislative council colleagues with an important question. So we had to get to the bottom of that one. But I left you in good hands with Matt and Rachel, certainly. It sounds like they've been doing a great job. So ultimately, Matt is our subject matter expert on all the things before you today, and I'll defer to him for much of the testimony, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all.
Okay, Matt, we're back to you.
Certainly, thank you, Senator. So the second item on the list, again, this not a new request. This was in the 22-23 joint capital bill request. The statewide correctional facility, life safety, and security needs and enhancements This is a $200,000 line item. This is typically an annual request of about $200,000, $250,000, and is used for facility camera needs, fence and perimeter intrusion detection system needs, as well as life safety. There's been a number of enhancements to the facilities over the years, putting half doors or doors with windows. There's good visibility, basically to ensure safety of all staff and incarcerated individuals in the facility. So these funds go to that and are a supplement to the maintenance funds that BGS utilizes for a separate purpose. So that's the purpose of that request.
Okay.
I'm going to skip to the fourth item, if that's all right. I know this is the AHS section. I'm focusing only on the DOC, and the secure residential line is not one of ours. But the last one here, number 4, statewide correctional facilities, accessibility improvements, and Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA compliance, the $1.2 million request. The Department of Justice had looked at the Vermont correctional facilities and made the determination that they are in need of ADA enhancements and upgrades for Chittenden Regional, Southern State, and Northern State. This $1.2 million represents the total estimated need for those projects. This is work that, through a settlement agreement that was negotiated with DOJ, this work needs to be done in about, well, now it's no longer 36 months from now, but approximately 18 to 36 months from when this started, which was fall of 2021. So we're about 6 months into this at this point. Some of the work that's part of that is able to be done absent these funds, but the large majority of the work requires funding for the work to be continued.
Now, you described it as a settlement with DOJ. In fact, is that settlement now a court order?
I don't believe so, but I could be mistaken on that. My understanding was it was agreement between the state and DOJ, but I don't think there's a court order involved that I'm aware of.
Okay, but in any event, the settlement has a time frame attached to it, and you believe you're going to be able to meet that time frame?
I would defer to BGS in terms of the scope of the work and the time frame, but I believe that they were at the part of these conversations as well. And I think that the 18 to 36 months was a range that was given for necessary time to complete the work.
Commissioner Fitch.
So yes, we have been actively collaborating with DOC and working side by side together on both the cost estimate and our ability to complete these projects. So absolutely, we can get the DOJ wanted a shorter time period. The reason why we were able to extend it was through that collaboration and working with DOJ. But one of the other things I wanted to point out that's really important for this committee to understand, as well as House Institutions and Corrections, is that normally we do not address ADA code, right? Because it's a code that keeps changing over time. Normally, we don't address it until such time as we do a large renovation project. However, in the case of DOJ, what they were saying is you have people that are there, in theory, this is what was told to me, against their will. And so therefore, anytime there's a change in ADA code, we are obligated to basically make sure that these correctional facilities meet the modern code, regardless of any other renovations in these facilities. So that is important moving forward for us to know and to be starting to plan for as we request funds, right, for these buildings over time.
Somebody from DOJ actually babysitting this project?
That I don't know the answer to. I do know that DOC is required to hire an independent architect to basically go back, because we're going to be managing the project, but they're going to be managing us. So as we do the ADA upgrades, they have to hire an independent third-party architect who's going to go around and say, yeah, yes, this meets ADA code, current ADA code, or no, it does not. And so I know that they will be doing that.
Okay. Matt, what do you got next?
I think we're in section 3 for AHS, and I think I've covered the DOC related items.
HVAC, Matt?
Sorry?
HVAC line item?
Apologies, yes, number 5, statewide correctional facilities, HVAC programming, schematic design, and design documents. It's a $1 million line item. I don't know that I have much to offer on this one. This was put in, I believe, by the House. I haven't been part of any conversation or testimony related to this, but I think the purpose of this was for, as it says, the design and the study of HVAC in correctional facilities that don't currently have.
Those are air conditioning, right? They have great air or whatever, just like that.
Yeah.
Can I speak to that? If that's
Sure.
okay? So I think we can all agree climate change is occurring, and we are starting to have more hot days on the record, right? When these facilities were built, we didn't have these extreme heat days or the number of extreme heat days that we do today, right? So again, those facilities were designed at the time for the environment that we had. Now, that being said, there's a couple of considerations for this committee to consider. We cannot spend more than $500,000 in the next year, and we cannot go past planning and programming, nor would I recommend that we do so. So the reason why I feel really strongly about that is that we have this other ongoing study about what the future of corrections will look like. And if we decide to disinvest in any one of those correctional facilities, it does make sense from a programming perspective to understand the impact of the cost at every facility. I think that's important, very, very behind that. But until we then couple that with what does the future of DOC look like, it doesn't make sense to continue to move design further down the road. Because why do I want to spend a lot of money on something that in the end of the day is not actually going to be built? It's not the best use of taxpayer dollars, in my personal opinion. The other thing, as we continue to hear, right, is that we are making a concerted effort, the administration and BGS, in lockstep together, to only request the money that we feel we can really spend in that year. And the reason is because there's so much pressure on the capital bill, right? So we want to make sure we're only asking for what we can spend so that there's additional money, right, that can be spent on other priorities, whether it's the administration or obviously the legislature has their priorities as well. And we're still looking to hope to revive the cash fund and to have some money on the bottom line. Again, we're really disappointed that there was no money left on the bottom line, including, the 7 or 8 million in A&E that moved over to the general fund. And so any opportunity to leave some money on the bottom line and be disciplined, right, is to really start with this cash, to support the cash fund approach. So this is an opportunity to reduce that line item while still being supportive, right, still advancing that project. And again, we can't spend more than $500,000 a year. And I think we need to wait for that report to come back in December to really make some data-driven decisions about how we want to move forward.
Okay. Matt, anything else you want to tell us?
I think that's everything we have on the DOC side. Thank you, though.
Commissioner Demo, anything else you'd like to tell us?
I think that about does it. I think Matt did a nice job. And I agree with my colleague from BGS that the $1 million seems like a big line that we probably won't be able to spend down. And certainly they're the experts on that space, but I'd support everything that she just added.
Okay. Committee, any questions?
Yeah.
Senator
What's the, so I take it with what you just said, you're not in favor of that $1 million?
We can't spend, so we've been working really hard to only ask for what we can spend in the following year. I can't spend more than 500,000.
Okay.
So if you appropriate more than that, it's just gonna be sitting and nothing's gonna be used with that money.
And then as far as that 500,000 or $1 million that's there, would you be tasked to looking at all the prisons that?
So $500,000 would cover planning and programming for every single correctional facility.
Okay, thank you.
Jeez,
My committee has had too much sugar.
He's having a break, I think he's.
If sugar is all what it takes, I'll bring you plenty of sugar every day.
Okay, I believe, committee, we have concluded our business for the day. I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming. There's a high possibility you might be back.
Oh, yeah.
Tell everybody that.
We are trying to get this bill out in the fairly near future. And
We're talking both 4 hours tomorrow.
I'm a little concerned about this committee dealing with 3 other committees that may be taking a different position here on the cash front.
We should probably have a discussion about that.
So we will have a discussion about that.
Maybe you need a subcommittee.
No, we need a study. How much we need, $500,000 to study it.
Now, you laughed, and that was one of the proposals from the House.
Oh, they wanted to do a
Study.
study.
$500,000 study.
Well, I want to thank all you witnesses for showing up. Committee, don't leave yet, and don't take us off of YouTube just yet. We should have a brief confab about this.
Roger that.
So, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Great to see you again.
Yes, God.
I'm happy to be in here the rest of the session if you'd like. Although that's Eric's job, so he might.
I think they probably like you better, Commissioner.
Yeah, we took a vote.
Now, Rachel, is this the first time you've had an opportunity to testify before?
No, just the first time without a mask.
That's nice.
Yep.
It's very nice.
I have a question for you, Commissioner. I was asked by a colleague today whether any of the windows in any of these community rooms actually opened.
Yeah, I used to ask for mine across the hall every year. They used to get across the.
The one in house transportation upstairs opens.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming there were
So
80.
I'm gonna give you two answers.
If you ask the right commissioner, they'll give you the right.
That's right. So the answer is the windows can open. However,
There's a storm window there.
we have an HVAC system, and when you open the windows, you throw the system off balance. So it's our preference, you can do one or the other. Turn the system off, open the windows, or don't open the windows and leave the system on. But you can't, you should not, people do it all the time, but you shouldn't be doing both at the same time.
She's saying should not shall. You see how that goes?
That's right.
That answer is a good answer. You can, both sides are happy.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm just giving the original answer I gave, which is no. You know?
It is our preference in buildings that have HVAC is to tell people no.
Fair enough.
See how nice she handles it?
Very diplomatic.
But everybody likes to have options, right? Option A, option B.
Okay, we got you. I'll tell them. Again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Committee, what do you think? Do we need a battle, or what do you want to do with this question?
I think we need a battle. I think that's what they're asked for. I think that I would dare say without speaking with everybody here, that we probably want to support the governor on that.
Yeah.
And so let's go to battle. I'm ready for that. But it is what it is. I think that
Two of you are sitting with Jane every morning, so you may have to double team and
yeah.
have this conversation.
So I think that along with her. Also. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more the merrier.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, but I think that's what the governor has asked, and I think it's a good plan. And
And I think it makes sense that we all know this money is going away in a couple of years,
Right.
a year or two, and if we can buy down some debt and free up
Here,
general money.
it's spending like water, I know that it's going to dry up and boy, what's.
well, this is the first transformational type of funding that will carry on by itself after all this money is gone.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it. So
Like Russ made like 15 grand this weekend.
that's
He's
it?
gonna save some.
That's it?
Otherwise, next weekend you only make 10 grand.
Oh.
So, you know.
Oh,
So
God,
we
I
have to plan for the future.
just don't want it to be that poor of a weekend.
Speaking of which, how do you like the candy?
Oh, I,
Which candy do you?
any candy,
I
right?
miss the
One piece fell on the,
sweet Werthers that you used to have.
one piece fell on the floor and I rolled in it.
I was looking at those chewy Werthers, trying to think, should I get those or should I just go with the originals? Because when Russ eats them, he just crunches.
I crunch them.
I know, I tried not to.
We had real chocolate across our place.
Oh,
Real chocolate. Oh, yeah, expensive ones.
Fresh stuff. Fresh stuff.
Expensive stuff.
Fresh stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, let's go get
All
some.
right, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, let's not